Hey guys, I'm back today, and as requested, I will be doing my guide to summer. We will be discussing homeschooling, snacks, activities, things to do with kids, life skills, all that fun stuff. So this is sort of a part two. I did a video very similar to this last year, which pretty much detailed why I homeschool my kids for the summer, for the next grade, and how to go about doing that, and how you can use your local area homeschooling moms, your local library, your school district, and your community as a resource in being able to do that effectively. So if you haven't seen that video, it may answer a lot of your how-to questions when it comes to homeschooling. And that video is linked in the description box below. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. Let's begin a little bit with the why. So why do I homeschool my kids for the next grade? I have this theory that it's not even about the curriculum, it's not even about what I'm teaching them, but the fact that we spend 1 to 2 hours every single day during the summer doing some sort of a growth or learning activity together, talking and just getting to know each other on a different level. That alone, if you did that, and if you didn't even worry about the curriculum, like your kids' confidence, their grades, their learning ability, their capabilities, everything would skyrocket, because it's so easy to get caught up in what we're doing, like everyday to-day mundane things like cleaning and cooking and chauffeuring our kids around and everything else that us moms do, that we forget to have that time to connect sometimes. And it's really easy to overlook that, especially during the summer. So that's reason number one. Reason number two is because I think that it is my job to be my child's ultimate teacher, their mentor, their life coach, their friend. And yes, we have wonderful teachers available in the school district that my children go to. I mean, they're just amazing. But they have 20 other students. They're not their parents. They don't know my children the way I know my children. And it is ultimately my job to take this responsibility. Also, the teachers at my children's school are limited by the curriculum that they have to teach. They're limited by certain rules. They're limited by, certain needs of the other children and things like that. But I don't have those limitations as my children's teacher. So I try to especially focus on things that I know they will not be covering in school. So I'm going to touch bases on some of those. Let me open up the chat box, say hi to you guys. I will be taking, the reason I decided to do this episode live, I did not do the one last year live, is because I want to be able to interact and take questions and things like that. I'm going to be covering snacks because that's a big issue during the summer. I've had some things happen with snacking, so we will talk about that, and life skills and how to modify them for your children. So let me go ahead and open up the chat box really quick. So what I usually do, and some of this you will see in that previous episode if you go and watch that, but just kind of a overview. So what I like to do is I like to start off by Googling the curriculum for the grade that my child will be entering into, right? So for example, Arman, my oldest child, is graduating from 6th grade and he will now be entering the 7th grade. So I will Google 7th grade Texas curriculum. That's it. That's all you do. And then a whole bunch of links pop up, and then you grab one of those curriculums and you save that. Okay, you can turn it into a PDF file, or you can print it out, whatever you want to do, cut and paste it into a Word file. So that's kind of the basis. Sometimes you hit a jackpot and some of the local area private schools or other schools will have their exact curriculum with the books listed and everything. And so you're like, okay, great. So you have kind of those two things to go by. So I grabbed that. And over the years, I have some homeschooling moms that homeschool full-time that live in my subdivision. And so over the years, I've made friends with them, and they will tell me about other area homeschooling activities that are happening in my community. A lot of these things are free. I did not know they were available because I didn't know to go look for them, right? So they kind of pointed me in the right direction. And so I have those resources. Also, the schools that my children go to, they have to update their books every year. So for example, if there is a science book, let's say it's a second grade science book, and the author or the publisher changed 2 pages in there. They have to update that edition and they have to get rid of the old books. So oftentimes they will let the students take those books. They will ask the students. So I start telling my kids, you start telling them, okay, start looking for those opportunities. They will bring in workbooks and textbooks home with them, and we save those to kind of learn off of. So that's another great resource. Your public library has so many wonderful things available too. They've got a summer reading program. They've got all sorts of things that you can do to get yourself started. So let's start with, let me start here. This is the first thing I do, and we started doing this last week. So summer for us begins today. Today is the last day of school. My kids, when they come home today, that's over. So last week what we started doing is we started going through each of their closets and we started pulling out the clothes that no longer fit, that are worn out. We started, as soon as they cleared out their lockers and started bringing stuff home, we started organizing that stuff. What needs to be tossed out, what needs to be scanned. Clear that clutter. Lunch boxes will get examined today. If it's worn out, tossed out, whatever can be reused, we will store that. The reason I do this, supplies, books, same thing, is because I feel like me and my kids, like the way we are, we can't really be doing anything fun or educational if our environment is cluttered. So the first thing I do is I just get rid of everything, and they know that in August we will start phase 2, and that is repurchasing things that they need for that school year if something is needed. So that's where I like to begin. The second thing we do is I sit down with my kids and we have a plan in place for their snack and menu. Okay, and this is, I don't know if you guys have dealt with this, but a few years ago, it got to a point where my kids were snacking like 8 or 9 times a day. And it felt like they were doing it, like if there was like a downtime in the day, if they were kind of bored, they would just come down for a snack. And with the nutritional education and research that I've had, I just could not allow this because that is really bad for them. As children, their bodies can maybe even process that amount of food or that much frequent eating. But as they get older, this can create many issues. And you guys know my oldest son has food allergies, and he has a very gentle and delicate digestive system. So he will literally like make himself sick if he does that. And so also point number 2 I noticed, this was a few years ago, is that if they didn't like something that I made, like let's say that if I made too many vegetables or something in one meal, then they would not eat that and just have like a snack 20 minutes later. So we have some rules in place now. What I do is I sit down and I come up with some healthy snack options, and Friday night or Saturday night is our family moving night, and then during that night they're allowed to have bad foods, which they know are foods that are actually not foods. They're food-like stuff that's created in factories. They know this, and they know that it's okay to eat those things in moderation, but they also need to know that that stuff is bad, right? That we can't be eating that way all the time. So those are things like chips or, sugary drinks, things like that. I want them to have a somewhat normal childhood where they get to experiment with that, but I also want them to understand that that food was created in a lab somewhere and that's not actual food, right? So I almost use that as an experiment. They will have that and they will say, okay, they feel sick later, especially my older one. He's got a very upset type of tummy. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe you had a little too much. And we read labels and we study those labels compared with like actual food labels. Like the label that might come on the package of a strawberry looks very different than that package, and we talk about those things. So it's a learning opportunity. So I create healthy snack options for them, because whatever you have available, when your children are hungry, they will grab those things. So hi Famina, Afreen, hi Breathe Fitness. We've got a lot of people here. Hello to everybody. I will be taking questions and stuff, but I do want to go over this. So some healthy snack options that my children enjoy are They'll do like a cut up banana with some peanut butter in there. They'll do cut up fruit. They'll do cheese and crackers. My kids love hummus and veggies. They'll love do like a mixture of nuts and raisins. They like yogurts, smoothies. With smoothies, what I do is I'll put 1 ratio of fruit with 2 to 3 ratio of vegetable, popcorn, things like that. But I have to have those things kind of pre-prepared and sectioned out so that they can have that available. My oldest one is really good with kind of fixing his snack and fixing snacks for his siblings, as long as everything is sort of available. So those are kind of some of the health options, and the things that I consider fun foods that aren't healthy options but they can have on our movie nights are chips. They can be cookies, things like that, things that you don't want to be eating every single day. They'll even have candy sometimes for, like, they'll have M&Ms, and I buy the packs that you can get at the movies, and so it feels like it's a proper movie night. Sometimes we'll let them have soda over the summer. This is a rare thing. We don't do that all the time. They know that soda is not good for you, but I also want them to be able to experience these things in a way that's like controlled, and they can have fun with it. So that menu, like the food menu, is something that we sit down and we prepare, and then we think about, like for example, when we thought about some fun breakfast ideas, it's usually the same every year, but they like, I could even reuse that, but they like sitting down and feeling like they're the cruise director and they're getting to decide on their summer. So even if it's like the same old stuff, they feel good. And I know I'm laughing, it's because like this year they're like, okay, let's do French toast for breakfast, and like pancakes and waffles, or PB&J, and I'm like, okay, those are like everyday, like normal foods that everybody eats, but just letting them decide that helps them take ownership of it, and it's just kind of a fun way to start off the summer. The second thing we like to do is we like to come up with some fun summer go-to activities. So the day after school ends, so today is the last day, tomorrow we will be going to the library and signing up for the fun summer reading program where they give you prizes for reading books and things. Our school also does one, but we go and sign up for that. They pick out a lot of books to bring home to have reading available. So that's one thing. We think of some other trips that we want to do, like day trips. So we'll do zoo. They said they wanted to go to the zoo again. They wanted to do a museum. They love the science museum, and it's free for us on Thursdays from 2 to 5 p.m. So on Thursdays, that's a really good activity because the museums and the zoos in Houston are really expensive compared to Chicago. That's where I'm from. In Chicago, the zoo was free. We never had to pay for the museums, at least while I was living there. So we try to do it as budget friendly as possible. They want to we have a pool for our subdivision. They want to do that, play dates, movie nights, parks, board games, cousin sleepovers. My kids love that. And then, library, things like that. So we plan that out. Again, this is stuff we do every year, and they just like it when we sit down and I'm like, okay, what do you guys want to do this year? So even though it's the same stuff, they like having sort of like control over that they're deciding. This year, they decided that they did not want to do this free summer movie program at the movie theater. And that was a very interesting reason that they gave me. So we have a couple of theaters in our area that do free summer movies, where every week on Wednesdays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays, you can go watch a movie for free, or it's $1 at some theaters. They decided they rather do movies at home with me because, and I asked them how come they didn't want to do that anymore, and they said because at home they like that we can pause the movies and discuss the different things that happened, or like if something's happening they want to discuss it, and they said they could not do that at the theater. This is what I mean by kind of taking that summer to the next level. I was just like blown away. Like I almost had tears in my eyes when they said that, because I'm like, you guys want to literally pause a movie and talk to little old me in the middle of it? Like, it's so sweet. So I did not even realize we did that, but every time I watch a movie with that at home, sometimes they'll be like, oh, pause this. So what do you think about this? Or I think he shouldn't have said this, or I think that was rude. So I love that. It helps that I actually enjoy watching kids movies a lot. I know this is really tough for Irfan, but he's a good sport and he does it all the time for the kids. But I actually love watching kids movies, so it comes kind of naturally to me. And I know everybody's different in that. So that's another thing that we like to do, is plan that out. Typically, my rule is that I will let them do one like big thing for the day. Now, when I say big thing, sometimes it's literally like today's big thing might be that we're going to go outside and have a balloon fight. Or today's big thing might be that we're going to go and spend the afternoon at the library. So it doesn't have to be really a huge thing, but them knowing that we're going to wake up, we're going to do our chores, we're going to do our homeschooling, and then we're going to do this one big thing, just like brightens their day and they have structure. Typically, if we eat out, then the activity will be free. And if the activity has a price, like we have to pay for admission somewhere, then we take our own food or a picnic or something, just to keep the cost low. So that's how we like to do it. Just so it's not like every activity turns into like really expensive things, if that makes sense. Give this video a thumbs up if you guys are joining me. Oh yeah, it seems like a lot of people are picking up their kids. I apologize. I was waiting for my daughter to take a nap to do this live chat, and it just turned out that I miscalculated the time. So I apologize for that. So let's get into homeschooling. If you watch my video from last year, you will learn a lot of the ideas of how I actually do it. So definitely do that. I got a question from one of my viewers, I think in yesterday's live chat. She said, what are the best books for an 11-year-old to read? And I wanted to really address this because this is very important. Please let your children choose their own books that they love to read. And I'll give you a couple of examples of that. I started out reading mystery books when I was a little girl, and I used to love reading so much that my dad would get really upset with me. He would say that, why are you always reading? Like, who reads this much? And so much so that I would hide in the closet or hide under the covers with a flashlight and read, because he thought it was weird for people to read so much, and he thought that I wasn't being like social enough and stuff, but I just really was consumed by books. And as I got older, like I started finding other books to read. Like I love nutrition books, I love self-help books. So it branched out. So when my oldest son was in second grade, he told me he hated reading, and I questioned him a little bit, and it turned out he didn't hate reading. He hated reading the books that were assigned to him. So I took him to the library and I let him choose whatever books he wanted, and he chose mystery books, so no surprise there. And I said, you can read whatever you want. You don't have to have other people assign you books. You read whatever you love to read. Funny thing is, 2 years ago, I was having a conversation with Irfan's nephew, who at the time was either 16 or 17 years old. And he was telling me that he hates reading and writing, and that he's worried about going to college because, you know, those are two things that he's going to do a lot of. So as I was talking to him, I asked him a few questions. I said, well, what is the one topic that you can't stop talking about, that everybody knows you for? And he said, cars. Like, all my friends know I'm the car guy. So I said, do you like reading about cars? And he's like, well, yeah, of course, I read about cars all the time. Like, do you like writing about cars? He's like, I haven't done so, but yeah, if I had to, I'd read about or write about cars. So I'm like, so you do love reading and writing. You just like reading and writing about things that you enjoy. And he was like, that was a new concept to him. He said he had not thought about it that way. So don't dismiss something just because that little flavor that you tried out wasn't for you. If you made me read books about cars, I'd hate reading, because cars is definitely not my thing, right? And so why would I attack reading just because I don't like cars? So let your children pick out their own books. As long as they're reading, their vocabulary is growing, they're spending time doing something quality, their reading increases actually. Their writing skills increase with the more that they read. So don't choose their books for them at all. For those of you guys that were asking, my 12-year-old reads books like The Millionaire Next Door, anything by Brian Tracy. He loves. In fact, his favorite book from Brian Tracy is How to Eat a Frog. or yeah, I think it's called How to Eat a Frog or something, or Eating Frogs, something like that. He loves Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Now, maybe some kids would not be able to relate to those books, but those are the kind of books that my son enjoys reading. So you let them read whatever they want to read. Another tip that I have is while they are doing their home study, their homeschool, you do something, take that time to do something for yourself that is also reading or educational. And this is so important. The reason I do the homeschooling is because I'm trying to tell my kids that you don't check out of school. School is not something like your education, your learning is not something that like you're being forced to do and then like you can't wait to get out of it, right? Learning is a lifelong pursuit. You're always learning and growing. My son and I talk about this all the time, like how I will be that person that will be learning and growing when I'm 99, hopefully, you know? I will learn and grow until the day that I die. That is just the type of person that I am. And that's how you should be. There is a famous quote I believe it's by Mark Twain, who said, "Don't let your schooling interfere with your education." I say this to my kids all the time, that school is somewhere where you're going to sit and learn how to learn, right? It doesn't stop there. When it's 3 p.m. and you come home, that's when you start the actual learning. You just learned how to learn at school. You learned how to be able to sit straight and grab a pencil and listen and learn how to learn. So after hours is when you're actually learning. Now, if I tell my kids go and read and they've never seen me read anything in my entire life, that's not a really good example. If I tell my children that you should be lifelong learners, but they've never actually seen me learn anything or seen me take a class, then that I'm not doing a very good job at teaching them. So what I recommend is while they are doing their schoolwork, you interact with them, you assign stuff, you teach them, but even if it's 15-20 minutes, part of that, they should be seeing you read something. If you want to take some free courses, Coursera.com is a site that I love. My sister told me this and it was an eye-opener. So they have courses on there by really good schools like Northwestern, Rice University, like every university pretty much on there. And you can pay for the courses or you can audit them for free. So if you don't care about the certificate, you can just take the course and audit it. And you get all of the curriculum, the teacher access, everything. You just don't get the certificate at the end. So I love that. And I want my children, I'm learning something at the same time, and then my kids can see that I'm living what I teach, right? What is it? I'm walking the walk. So when I say lifelong learner, mommy's doing it too. So I really like that. And then sometimes they see me struggling with certain things or managing my time, having to balance that. I want those things to be important things in my children. Those are good learning opportunities for them. So let's see. I'll take a question and then I'll move on to the life skills area. The Secret Life of Mom says, "You are rocking it. Great ideas." I'm so glad you guys like that. Reader's Choice. Awesome, Lynn. Johnny and Michelle said, "Hi Mina, do you let the kids play iPad, iPhone? Is there a time limit? Love this topic. I have 3 boys, 12, 10, and 3. Your video really motivates me to do better this summer." Awesome, good. So the whole point of this is to have fun with your kids, bond with them, and grow with them. Sometimes I learn very interesting things about my children during this process that I wouldn't have learned otherwise. For example, like you see your kids in a very limited way. If you're not learning, like if you're not homeschooling during the summer or at any point sitting down with them, you might not learn certain things. Like I'd never realized that he's going to second grade, my middle child, my now going to second grader, was really good at math when he was in kindergarten from playing the iPad. Isn't that funny? So his teacher had called in a meeting for something different, and she had mentioned that he was exceptionally good at math, and I did not realize that. And so I asked him about it, and he said, well, yeah, when he's playing a game, if there's 100 coins and he gets another 100 coins, then he has 200 coins. And so he was able to use those concepts and get like amazingly gifted at math, which was really interesting. So let me answer your question first. So yes, I do allow it to them. I don't enforce a time limit on them. I let them self-regulate it. And the reason that I do that is because they earn the time and privileges and things like that for good behavior by modeling good character and things like that. So I will give you an example of that. My 12-year-old has been bugging me for a few years to start a YouTube channel, and I kept putting it off. I wasn't sure if this was a good idea, and I kept saying, I don't know, like, you know, there's a lot of mean people on YouTube. Sometimes they can make comments. And he kept saying, no, Mom, I really want to do this, and you can moderate my comments and stuff. And I kept putting it off on him. And last year, if you guys remember, I had an Android phone and the camera died on that. We took it to 3 people, including like actual like AT&T Place and 2 other service people, and all three of the places said that the camera could not be repaired on that phone. There was no way. So this year, Irfan gave me his old iPhone, and we had the other phone in the drawer sitting somewhere. My 12-year-old took the phone apart, fixed the camera, put it together, and used it to film a video of his siblings playing. I was like, how did the camera start working? And he explained it to me, and I could not believe it because 3 professionals had told us that that camera was not fixable. Based on that alone, I told him, you know what? I think you're ready to start your YouTube channel. So he earned that by modeling like really good skills, and I hope that makes sense. Same thing happened a few years ago where my oldest son kept saying that he felt like his bedtime was too early, that he would wake up way too early in the morning, and that him and his brother should have separate bedtimes because they were 5.5 years apart. And so I said, okay, I'll think about it. And a few months down the road, I had forgotten to tell my kids. I got busy and I forgot to start their nighttime routine. And I heard my 12-year-old, he wasn't 12 years old at the time, my oldest son, he was younger. I heard him reminding my middle son, hey, I think Mommy forgot, but it's bedtime. Let's start getting ready for bed. And I was really amazed at that. And I called him downstairs and I said, I'm really amazed at your really good character and your time management skills. And I think you're ready to extend your bedtime. So I'm telling you guys these stories that use these opportunities to let them earn playing time on their iPad and things like that. The iPad issue I've touched on before as well. I had a mom criticize me for letting my oldest one play on the iPad once, and a few years later, my son, he's an expert coder now. He develops games, and so he was telling me, he was like, Mom, you remember that mom that was like, you know, scolding you for letting us play on the iPhone? He's like, if you ever see her again, you can tell her that my son doesn't play video games, he creates them. And I thought that was such a good point, that the world that we live in now, you have to give your children some access to these things. Otherwise, they're not ready for the world that we're leading towards. So yes, I do, and I let them self-manage it. If they abuse it, then yes, we have a talk, and we remind them that, you know, this is a privilege, that the time earned should be a reward for certain other things that you did. Okay, let's move on to the life skills. There are some things that our school system, no matter how great they are, they will never teach them. It is not their responsibility to teach them. It is our responsibility as parents to teach them. But I think oftentimes as parents, we think, well, they're going to school, so, you know, they're learning this stuff. But I'm here to tell you, they are not really learning a lot of these things. So some of the things that I go out of my way to teach my children are, these aren't in any particular order. So I'm just going to kind of go through the list really quickly. And if you guys want me to do an in-depth video on any of them, I will be more than happy to. So one is finance. I want to teach my children how money works. In school, they will teach your kids like the currency. They will teach them that, coins, dollar bill, $5 bill, but they won't teach them how money actually works. You know, you exchange time for money, you exchange services for money, you exchange expertise for money. They will not teach your children credit cards, how to use them wisely. They won't teach your children how to use an ATM, banking, investing. I know that a common question that keeps coming up on our channel is, how do you actually buy stocks and shares? So I am teaching my children how to be able to do that. How to go online, create a brokerage account, how to use $100 to buy shares and stocks, I want my children to know how to do this before their 14th or 15th birthday. So that's one thing that is important. Another thing is nutrition. Where does food come from? How is food processed? What are food like products? What's organic food? What is GMO? How to create different meals using foods, how to read nutritional labels, what are micronutrients, what are macronutrients, what do these things mean, what are vitamins and minerals, how do these things create, how are they created together to create a healthy body, what happens to food when we eat it. These are all things that we should be teaching our kids. Cooking, how do you cook? What happens when you mix different chemicals together, food together? What happens if there's a fire in the kitchen? How do you handle that situation? How to go grocery shopping? We've already worked on the fact that when you look at the grocery store, if you took off the rooftop, the parameter around the grocery store is typically the healthier food, like your produce and your eggs and all that stuff, and the aisles in the middle tend to be the more processed foods, things like that. You want to teach them how things are labeled in grocery stores to make you want to spend more money. What's the difference between generic brands and brand name foods? Where are foods typically located, like where to look, like above the shelf and below the shelf are usually places where you can find better deals. Sometimes in the prime real estate areas, the stuff that's higher price, things like that. I know that a lot of parents panic when their children are going to college because they've never had their children go grocery shopping or things. So as they're going into their teenage years, you want to be able to hand them $50 and say, you only have $50. Go and fill up a grocery store. You don't even have to buy the items. You can do this as an experiment. Give your child $50 or imaginary $50 and give them a cart, and while you're doing grocery shopping, let them go. If they're 13, 14 years old, let them go and pick out $50 worth of groceries. And when they come back, ask them how many meals can they prepare with that. Cheetos and Coke, does that have all of your micronutrients in there? So things like that, make it fun, make it a challenge, and have fun with them, be ridiculous with them. I laugh and make fun of my kids even all the time because I want my children to be able to laugh at themselves and laugh at jokes, right? Because if they've never had the opportunity to see you make fun of yourself and laugh at yourself, then they become uptight, I feel like, and they don't know how to do that. Another thing, working on this with my 7-year-old right now. This is his summer goal. How to manage your time. My older one naturally has good time management skills. He definitely gets that from mommy and daddy. But my middle son is kind of laid back, let's just use that word, and he can let time escape in all too many ways. So we're learning how to manage our time wisely. Another thing, which may be surprising to a lot of you guys, is I teach my children to question authority. And this is very important. Sometimes I will do this randomly by giving them ridiculous instructions and telling them they have to do this because mommy said so. And they know that I think that that's a ridiculous thing to say to a child, so now they always catch me. But when they were little, they would look at me and say, you want us to jump out the window? And I would say, yeah, I want you to jump out the window. And I want them to laugh at these kind of things and it's funny, but I want them to realize that there are sometimes situations that are equally ridiculous and that they have to be able to say, no, I'm not going to do this, even if you are an authority leader in saying this, because this is ridiculous and this could hurt me or this could get me in trouble. So sometimes they will hear me disagreeing with teachers, disagreeing with authors, disagreeing with doctors. I want them to know that just because somebody is a highly qualified and respected individual does not mean that everything that comes out of their mouth is the gospel, is like the truth, right? And that sometimes even really smart, educated people say things that don't make sense or say things that may not be true or may not work for you. So questioning authority. Also, I think in today's world, we can take this beyond a little bit further and say, when you Google something and an article comes up, just because an article says something on the internet doesn't mean everything is correct. So I want my children to learn these things. Being able to research something. If my children ever say, hey mom, what does this mean? I give them a look and they're like, okay, we're gonna go Google it, because they know now I'm gonna ask them 5 minutes later, did you Google it? Yes. What did you come up with? Because I want them to become resourceful. I want them to be able to go and learn these things. And I tell them the reason that you have access to computers and iPads and these kind of things is so you can use them to your advantage. These are not just toys, right? There is benefits to having this. We had to go to the library, they hear that, like we had to go to the library to like do this. You can Google stuff, so use it. Public speaking, this is a big one. I have a whole video on this. If you watch no other videos on my channel, watch the public speaking one. How to say no gracefully, even if it's your best friend, even if it's your mom, even if it's your next door neighbor, even if it's your teacher. If you don't agree with something, or something feels uncomfortable, doesn't sound right, or it just doesn't work for you, how do you say no gracefully? There will be a lot of situations that our children are placed in where they may be asked to do something that is not right, or they may be, just from peer pressure, things like that. How do you say no without jeopardizing your relationship, your friendship? And at the end of the day, if it's something that you strongly disagree with, how to be able to say no even if it messes up your friendship. Things like that. How to be tolerant of people that are different than you, people that are younger than you, people that are older than you. I have a great story about this. We had somebody come over and they brought over their child, and he was 4 years old, the kid, and he was just all over the place. He was very messy and just loud and jumping and just knocking things down and stuff. And that's just how the child is, and their parent was completely okay with them doing that at our house. So my children are not used to that, because I don't know, they're just not. So anyways, after that child left, my kids were like, oh my God, thank God he's gone. Like, he was so annoying. You're not going to believe what he did upstairs. Like, come look at our rooms and things. And even though I agreed that I found that behavior annoying, I want my children to learn how to be tolerant, because these things happen. And so I sat them down and we talked about this a little bit, and I said, sometimes people like that will come over, and sometimes you are that person to somebody else without meaning to be. And I gave my son an example of this, because my oldest one was like, well, I never did that. I'm like, well, yes, you did. When you were little, you were all over the place. But I gave him a recent example. A few years ago, we went to go visit my sister-in-law, my husband's sister, and her kids are older than my kids. So at that time, one was an 18-year-old, I think the oldest son, and the her two younger kids were like 15, 16. It's the same one with the story that I shared about the book, about reading. And then her daughter was like 13 at the time. Okay, so my kids are young, right? They go there, and I could hear that the kids were watching a movie upstairs. And I realized that like 5-6 minutes into the movie, I realized that Armand was talking through the whole movie. Like, he would just not be quiet. And I find that kind of behavior completely annoying. And I could not believe it. I was just waiting for him to like realize it and be quiet, and he wouldn't. So I made an excuse and I called him downstairs. And this was a few years ago, so he was like 8-9 years old, right? And I said, Armand, you're not letting them watch the movie. I'm glad you're enjoying the movie, but you have to keep it quiet so they can like actually hear the dialogues and stuff. And he was like, oh, okay, I'll be quiet. So I didn't realize this, but he must have gone upstairs, and they must have asked him why he went downstairs, and he told them. So he told his cousins, Irfan's nephews, that my mommy said that I was talking too much through the movie. They paused the movie, and one of his nephews came downstairs and he said, oh, please don't do that. It's totally fine. We don't mind. Like, we're just so happy that he's enjoying the movie. We feel bad that we don't really have that many toys and stuff, and your kids are younger, so definitely don't worry about it. And I was so impressed. Like, can you believe, like, this is a 13, 14, 15-year-old boy, right? It probably is really annoying behavior. I find it annoying if somebody talks through the whole movie that I'm trying to watch and enjoy with them. But he was so tolerant of my child's like, I could not believe it. And so when I used that as an example for Armand, he understood. So I said, this is part of being a gracious host. Like, when somebody comes over, you do your best to make it a comfortable and good experience for them, just like your cousins did for you, even when you were being annoying. So when I say being tolerant, I mean like taking it a step further and being tolerant with younger children, as well as your peers and people that are different than you, and as well as elderly people who may be moving slower, or they might be hard of hearing, things like that. How to navigate that gracefully. So let's see, we covered this page. A few more life skills. Are you guys still with me? Give this video a thumbs up. Yes, The Secret Life of Mom said, I teach all my kids how to cook, boys too. Yes, so that's on my list. I'm teaching my kids how to be able to do all three of them, all range of activities, and that's part of it. It will come. So Kuropi said, some kids learn differently. I used the iPad to boost my son's interest in reading because he hated reading actual books. Now he begs to be taken to the library. This is a great example. So not all iPad time is used, as a way to play games and things. And let me tell you, sometimes my oldest son used to play games, and then he learned how to create games. So it's not all bad. Like, you have to let children be children too, in a way that is consistent and authentic to the world that they live in. So let's go through some more life skills. I'm teaching my kids how to be able to apologize. Obviously, this comes naturally to my daughter. I think this is such a female-dominated thing. It took some work with my boys, but I want them to know how to apologize. One thing we learned a couple of years ago with Arman was there was a situation he had with his friend, and we talked to his parents, and he knew that the following day his friend was going to come and apologize to him for calling him names. Now, Arman said that since his friend also felt like he did something wrong, even though Arman felt like he didn't, he said that it would be totally awkward for him if his friend apologized and he just stood there. So how does he handle this? And this is a big thing. I'm teaching my children how to be able to navigate different communication situations, social awkward situations. What if somebody calls you out on something? What if somebody says something inappropriate? What if somebody says something mean? What if somebody says something to hurt your feelings? Like, how do you handle that? So I told him that you can apologize without admitting fault if you feel like you did not do that thing right. And he said, how do I do that? So I said, when he comes to you and he says, I apologize for calling you names, you can say that I also apologize that our friendship fell apart. Or you could say something like, I'm sorry that I hurt your feelings, or I'm sorry that we weren't friends for 3 days. And he loved that idea. And so the next day when he went to school, I didn't want to tell him exactly what to say, so I gave him a range of options. So when he went to school next day, his friend came and apologized to him. He had something to say, and he said they shook hands, they hugged, and they've been friends since then. So sometimes these kind of opportunities are good for learning how to be able to navigate tricky social situations. This is another one that I think I learned in a very awkward way, so I made sure that my kids know that if they find out of somebody's passing in a friend's family or somebody like that, how to offer your condolences and what to say, how to say it, how to be there for somebody when maybe something happened. Let's say somebody went through something horrible and you want to be there for them, but they don't want to discuss it, how to handle that. Let's see, grooming. This is a big one. Every week I take time to make sure that Sunday is our laundry day. That's when I check my children's nails. I don't have to do that with my older one. But I want them to know that grooming, presenting yourself, wearing clean ironed clothes. My children know, do not come in front of me with wrinkled clothes. No, that doesn't happen. So I like my kids' clothes pressed. Again, we don't spend a ton of money on clothes, but ironing your clothes is free, right? Putting on a little bit of cologne, making sure your nails are cleaned and trimmed. Those things don't take very much effort, and it's all free. So everybody can do that, and everybody should do that. Another life skill is fitness, the human body. Why the human body was designed to move, why it's not good to sit all the time, why it's not good to not get enough sleep, things like that. Oh, this is a big one, and I'm not sure how to even explain this. You know how when we were in high school, at that time, it felt like high school was everything, and that because it consumed you, it felt like that whatever thing happened in high school, like if it was good, it was amazing, and if it was bad, like that's it, your life was over. I have made a really great effort in teaching my kids that this is a very small time, like I don't know how to explain this. It's the concept of time importance. That's what I say, but I don't know how to explain it to you guys. Let me know if you guys get it. I basically say things like, when you're in fifth grade it consumes you. It's important. Everything everybody says is important. Like, if people don't like you, that's important. If you're celebrated, that's important. But when you're in seventh grade, you forget everything, and it's like almost irrelevant what happened in fifth grade. So I want them to kind of remember that right now, if it's good, enjoy it and be present for it. But if it's bad, it's going to change. It's a phase. You're going to grow out of it. And I think this is important because I don't want my children to get to high school or even middle school these days and peer pressure or bullying or any of these things. I want them to realize that if something is good, it's going to pass and change. And if something is bad, it's also going to pass and change. So learn to deal with it, address it, but at the same time realize that it's not the end of the world. Your world is only just beginning, and don't let these little things like bog you down or make you feel like your life is over. Let's see what else. So the other one we covered was cleaning, laundry. I started my kids' laundry. They helped me start doing their laundry when they were 9 months old. So we started them really young. By the time they were 18 months old, they were already putting stuff in the dryer, helping fold things. It wasn't perfect, but they helped. Another thing is how to choose a career, a college major. A lot of my younger life coaching clients, or just people I've met, they say that a big problem in the US is that nobody tells you or helps you figure out how to choose a college major, how to choose a career path that will be the best choice for you, things like that. And so we talk about those things, that passion versus making money, your investment in college versus what you're going to get out of it, things like that. Another life skill, qualities to look for in friends, and later that will translate to qualities to look for in potential mates and partners, right? People you're going to want to marry and date and things like that. So what's the definition of a good friend? Especially for girls, I feel like this is so important, because if you don't teach them, they look for outside cues for this, and sometimes they end up choosing the wrong friends or the wrong crowd. So I try to explain, and I use it by choosing my own examples. Like my kids know that certain friends of mine I share more with, while other friends I don't, and they know why and why not, because I tell them like, this person has this quality and this person not so much. So they can kind of pick that kind of behavior out in their own friends. Frida said, such great advice, Mina. Thank you so much. I will be watching this video again and take notes. You always have great advice. Thank you so much. Awesome. Thank you, Frida. That just made my day. Becky said, my fiance Rohit and I do not have any children yet, as we are getting married in October. Congratulations. But when we do, God willing, we will definitely bring them up along these principles. Thank you, Mina. That is awesome, Becky, and congratulations. So I've got a couple more. I think I mentioned this one, but like navigating sticky situations, like how to deal with toxic friends, how to deal with toxic family members. What if somebody cuts you out off in traffic? How to deal with that? What if somebody says something really rude at you at a party? How do you deal with that gracefully? Standing up to peer pressure. This is an important one. What if you really like somebody, they're your friend, and you see them doing drugs, or they offer you drugs? Like, how do you handle that sort of a situation? And I know a lot of these situations, it's so different to talk about them and then really be present in them. But as a parent, I feel like it is my job to have at least had that discussion and had it in different situations, not that one-time awkward thing. And that's another one, guys. If you don't talk to your children from like when they're babies, and talk to them often and all the time about sometimes things that are really awkward and uncomfortable, when you have those important discussions with them, like about their sexual health or drugs and peer pressure and bullying, it is awkward because you've never been doing it. But if you've always been discussing these things, it's not awkward, because they realize that sometimes those things are weird to talk about, but mom's always been kind of open with us, and I need to discuss it. Like for my oldest son, when they saw that movie that they show in school, like we're talking about puberty and stuff, I told him, he can discuss it with me, or if he wanted to discuss it with my oldest son is best friends with my brother, and they really connect. They might as well have been brothers. And my younger brother is pretty much like my son, so I guess that makes sense. So they are pretty much like brothers, and he tells me that sometimes he can relate a lot better with my brother than Irfan. It's because my brother was born and raised here, and he understands how the schooling is here. So a lot of times when he tries to discuss those things with Irfan, he can't relate because it wasn't like that in the country that Irfan grew up in. So I told him if he wanted to talk about that movie, discuss it with me, he could. But if he wanted to talk about it with my brother, that was fine. He said, is it okay if I discuss it, with my brother? And I said, absolutely. So my brother was later telling me, without giving me details, that he had a lot of questions. So they showed them the movie, and there was sort of no question and answer about puberty and the changes and stuff. And I love God. I'm just so blessed that he has that sort of a relationship and communication with my brother, that he can openly ask him some very important questions. So have that communication, and if they do it to you, I think with the opposite gender it might be a little weird for them, but have that open line of communication, and if you do it all the time, it's not awkward. And so I hope that makes sense. Just keep that line of communication open. Guys, that alarm was for my kids' school. Today's the last day, so I get to go pick them up. Let me see if there's any other questions that I missed. Afreen said, as much as it's a learning opportunity, Google can be a little unsafe for kids. Sometimes there are other options like Kindle, which are safe for kids to use. Whatever works for you, whatever you're comfortable with, definitely do that. Talia said, I also homeschool my kids anytime they are not at public school. One of my favorite resources is Confessions of a Homeschooler. She offers a large amount of free downloads and great ideas. Awesome. I will write that down. Confessions of a Homeschooler. Thank you. I am always grateful for any resources. Padma said, great tips, Mina. Thank you so much. Awesome. So guys, thank you so much for joining me. So let me go pick up those kiddos and let's start our summer. Guys, have an amazing summer. Check out my other homeschooling video if you haven't already, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.